Many theories have been proposed to prove the importance of guided reading as an instructional strategy in itself. Now, research has developed and honed its interest in identifying the best practices during guided reading. There is relevance behind the different instructional strategies teachers choose to use during guided reading. This review will focus on 4 major themes which frequently appear throughout the literature reviewed. These themes are questioning to check for understanding, explicit instruction, dialogue, and reciprocal teaching. Effective instructional strategies being used during guided reading is important because it will help educators to create a more effective guided reading for their learners. Though guided reading had become an instructional framework in the 1940s, it wasn't until the 1990s that Gay Sue Pinnell and Irene C. Fontes, the now gurus of guided reading, provided the framework that is still implemented today. Fontes and Pinnell introduced their organized framework to the United States with their book, Guided Reading, Good First Teaching for All Students. The framework Fontes and Pinnell created allows time for different types of learning, while accommodating for different learning levels. However, the ultimate focus for all students is to be able to create meaning from their instructional level. Today, guided reading is a staple used throughout many literacy curriculums. For the teacher, guided reading means taking the opportunity for careful text selection and intentional and intensive teaching of the systems of strategic activities for proficient readers. Now, the use of guided reading should be to bring students along the reading continuum as far as the instruction could be given in one school year. In order for this to be done, the existing romance with guided reading needs to continue, but the reality of it should be considered. The realities of guided reading is that the continuous professional learning is needed to ensure the appropriateness and the powerfulness of its instruction. Teachers need to be well educated on the framework of guided reading and what instructional strategies should be used in order to truly consider their instruction a best practice. Guided reading is challenging us to be more mindful about the strategies we use to help students become strong, independent readers. In Guided Reading, Who is in the Driver's Seat, written by Susan Kidd Valium and Eden Green Braham, provided questions and answers regarding who is to lead the different tasks within the guided reading. They explain that students should be in the driver's seat when activating text-related knowledge, addressing word problems, and during text discussions. These are the lead parts to any guided reading lesson, and the student should be in charge of working through this process with the teacher as a facilitator to help guide them, but not explicitly teach them. This allows students to engage in spontaneous discussions about the knowledge related to the text, and it allows them to activate their own prior knowledge, enabling students to make text connections. Students will learn to self-regulate while reading. The goal of guided reading is to enable students to become active readers who extend their systems of reading throughout a process. Anita Inquinet identifies several of these essential understandings as self-monitoring, searching for cues, discovering new things, checking sources, making connections, correcting their reading, problem-solving new words, etc. With this comes fluency, speed, accuracy, inflection, and greater meaning. Hence the importance of a teacher's role in guided reading, having to be able to build and guide students as they create their extended systems of reading. Guided reading provides the necessary opportunity for teachers to explicitly teach reading strategies as the students' individual levels, but skillful teaching is required. Implementing guided reading is not enough of a strategy in itself, but it is the strategies that are used within guided reading that make it one of the best practices. and that is why teachers need to be knowledgeable in what strategies work best during their small group guided reading instructional time. Guided reading and its strategies have been a part of the literacy curriculum for decades, but it has evolved due to the work of previous research done. In 1946, Emmett Betts created a guided reading curriculum, the direct reading activity. Just over 10 years later, Lillian Gray and Dora Reese wrote a book, Teaching Children to Read, second edition, that mirrored Bates's views and findings on guided reading. Almost another decade later, Bond and Wagner created a 9-step daily reading lesson plan, where step 4 was guided and silent reading. The trend of silent reading was overlooked in the 70s, but in 1986, George and Evelyn Spach carried on the previous ideas of guided reading and outlined a 5-step basal reading lesson, including reading and guided reading and interpretations. Again, in 1990, guided reading was addressed by Margaret Mooney in her book, Reading to, with, and by Students. She argues that guided reading was an instructional strategy of reading with the students, not having them listen to you read or reading independently. Finally, today's experts of guided reading, Fontys and Pinnell, their first book, Guided Reading, Good First Teaching for All Students, created a shift in guided reading from being an instructional strategy in itself to becoming a way of creating appropriate and effective small groups. The history of guided reading has been built upon to this point, and it seems as though these theories that have helped create guided reading to what you see in many classrooms today. There is an importance of instructional strategies to enhance a student's comprehension. Comprehension is the student's ability to make meaning from what they read, and without being able to comprehend, a student is truly not literate. Fry and Fisher identified questioning to check for understanding as one of the 4 distinct teacher moves as they scaffold students' understandings. Jones, in her study, Comprehension Questioning, Small Group Guided Reading Instruction for Urban Students with Learning Disabilities, references Fry and Fisher's research study and identifies how her research method was parallel to what they had conducted. It states, "This study replicates the methods used by Fry and Fisher while observing general education teachers providing small group guided reading instruction to groups of students that included students with learning disabilities." Then, in another study done by Denton, Fletcher, Taylor, Barth, and Vaughan, it was explained how through the explicit instruction that comprehension strategies were through think-alouds, feedback, modeling, and questioning. Additionally, in the word study instructional part of the routine was where teachers would ask oral comprehension questions. This research study explains 4 instructional strategies to aid in comprehension, and I feel that all of them are significant and are proven through other research studies as well. Questioning is a text comprehension strategy that has been improved upon over several decades. These improvements consist of making the changes from close-end reading questions to open-end reading questions, random questioning to planned questioning, and generic critical thinking questions, generic questioning stems, and student-led questioning. In a study done by Thelma Gunn, Questioning and Expository Text Comprehension, it examined whether expository text processing may be improved through questioning. The study found that guided reading questions using generic question stems did in fact improve expository text processing regardless of the level of one's domain knowledge. Likewise, Emma Phillips addressed the importance of specific and planned questioning and how and what it can do for students' comprehension. In her case study, she explains that it is not just the questions, but it is the questioning prompts that create vital opportunities for children to discuss and understand what it is they have read. Here, she is expressing the importance of having questioning prompts and being prepared with questions, and these prompts can be used to help students be able to create good questions for others. An aspect of questioning as an instructional strategy, not as during a guided reading, but always was mentioned in each of these articles, and this is the concept of wait time. Wait time is the amount of time given to the students after questions have been asked. This allows for all students to ponder a well-constructed response without the feeling of having to know it immediately. If adequate wait time is allowed, you are allowing students to check for their own understanding prior to hearing someone else's responses. Therefore, with questions comes wait time and a strong check for understanding. Explicit instruction is where the teacher clearly outlines what the learning goals are for the students. A clear explanation of the skills and information structures they are presenting is relayed to the students in a means in which they will grasp. There is significance in explicit instruction, but to different degrees of implementation during guided reading. Fry and Fisher identified how teachers use explicit instruction during modeling to identify what strategy was being implemented and how to implement it properly. This was a part of their fourth finding, teachers providing direct explanations and modeling. Next, Jones often references the importance of explicit instruction during the guided reading instruction time, but also explains that it alone is not enough for students to learn the reading curriculum or become proficient and strategic readers. Just because an individual sees how something is done properly, they will not be able to attain the skill themselves without self-application. Denton, Fletcher, Taylor, Barth, and Vaughan conducted a study to find and compare the effects between the progress students make in guided reading versus explicit instruction. The results found that the use of guided reading for the development of word reading in students with reading difficulties, but it suggests that a more explicit approach is associated with stronger effects on students' phonemic decoding, text reading fluency, and reading comprehension. Therefore, a more mixed approach should be implemented for optimal outcomes. There should be an exchange of conversation amongst the students, and the teacher should be there to facilitate this conversation called dialogue. In this study done by Wendy D. Kars, she attempts to determine the effects of using modified versions of Think, Pair, Share during a guided reading lesson. It was determined that through discussion, readers can refine and evaluate their comprehension strategies. When dialogue is incorporated into guided reading, it allows the reader to share what they are thinking aloud to the group, which also allows for others to ponder new ideas, revise their own ideas, and respond to one another in a purposeful manner. In a study done by Fletcher, Greenwood, Grimley, Parkhill, and Divya, they too wanted to identify the need for further development in allowing more student-led dialogue and less teacher-dominated discourse in guided reading instruction. Fletcher and the others concluded that student-led dialogue was not evident enough. Reciprocal teaching is an instructional strategy where students become the teacher in guided reading groups. First, teachers must model, then help students learn to guide the group discussions using 4 specified strategies: summarizing, question generating, clarifying, and predicting. Once students have learned these strategies, they become responsible for leading the guided reading group discussions about the material being read, Reciprocal teaching includes 4 comprehension strategies that can and should be used in guided reading groups, regardless if reciprocal teaching is being implemented or not. However, this teaching style is research strategy that has proven to be effective in guided reading groups to aid in students' understanding of the text. Spoor, Bernstein, and Krchik researched the effects of strategies, instructions, and reciprocal teaching to help improve students' comprehension strategies. Their study was conducted with grades 3 through 6, and they were able to conclude that explicit instruction of multiple reading strategies is a feasible tool to enhance students' reading comprehension. And the students in their study benefited most from explicit reading instruction, supplemented with a practice in small groups of reciprocal teaching activities. In the research done by Hang and Young, the effects of reciprocal teaching on reading strategies of comprehension, self-efficacy, and motivation. The application portion of this study to this review was the effects of reciprocal teaching on one's comprehension. They found that the implementation of explicit teaching prior to reciprocal teaching improved students' reading comprehension. Gathered from the literature reviewed for this report, guided reading has grown from being an instructional strategy in and of itself to being a staple literacy curriculum today. Teachers are being required to implement specific instructional strategies such as questioning to check for understanding, explicit instruction, dialogue, and reciprocal teaching within the guided reading lesson. There needs to be support for these differentiated strategies, and teachers need to choose them wisely and with purpose for what they use during their guided reading time.
First off, I chose this research topic on account that guided reading is something new to our district's curriculum. Last year was the first year of our new curriculum, Benchmark Universe, which is one that consists of guided reading. Having had Hardcourt in the past, which did not incorporate guided reading, the staff members were in quite the uproar. For me, being a first-year teacher last year, I didn't have much of an adjustment to make or anything new that I needed to learn because everything was new for me. However, veteran teachers or teachers who had been in the district for a while were not used to this change and this new amount of work that they were expected to do. Additionally, they did not understand the importance or the value in guided reading. And so I wanted to choose something that could help my staff members understand that guided reading is much more than sitting with a small group of students and listening to them read or simply reading a book. However, it should be making use of strategies that will help the student with different skills such as comprehension. And so knowing that the strategies that teachers choose are of importance is what my focus of the literature review was. So all of the staff in my building are always open to learning new things, professional developments, and things of that nature. Now, throughout this entire process, I have kept close communication with professionals in my building that I work closely with on a daily basis, such as my PLC team, which I work with my grade level. Throughout my research process, I would keep them updated and share different research articles that I've found, different theoretical frameworks, methods, strategies, and I would keep them posted on things like this, either by posting them in our Google Classroom or emailing them. However, I would like to formally share this and all of my findings in a presentation with first the focus leads. Now, the focus leads consist of the building principal, the dean of students, and the instructional coach. These three individuals know much about the district, much about our building, and are very knowledgeable in guided reading themselves and our curriculum. Now, after I share with them, I would like to share with our SIP team. I am a member of the SIP team. I'm our second grade representative. And so SIP team has a representative from each grade level. And our goal is to improve the school. And by sharing with them this presentation, they can give me enough feedback and things that they would want to be included or demonstrations that they might want to hear. And I can make a strong, hopefully the strongest presentation, an almost professional development presentation for the building itself. I hope that by the end, the professional development helps all staff members at least take one strategy away that they would like to try in their guided reading groups, and in hopes see a success and see the importance of the work that they're doing.